Okay, this isn't a regular video. This is just my version of journaling. My therapist says that if there are things in my life that are hurting me, that I should write them down. Like in the course of my day, I should write down what's going on in my day and how I feel about it. And if what I write down is too embarrassing to share with anybody else, or something that someone could use against me, just burn it. Now, I didn't use a paper journal. I was putting my journal on my computer, and I wasn't getting rid of any of it because my life is horrible. So there's not, as far as what could somebody use against me, what difference does it make? There's nothing that I'm ashamed of. Here's the thing. You know, when my therapist told me if it's something I'm ashamed of, I got to thinking about all the things that I never talk about or don't normally talk about. And I shouldn't be ashamed of any of this stuff. I never consented to the abuse I've been put through. None of the abuse I was put through was in retaliation. In other words, I've never hurt anybody. I've always believed in the golden rule, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. And if people did that, I would have a wonderful life. But when you do good things for people, they always come back to do terrible things to you, or they usually do. And as you know, a lot of the abuse you get is just a way for the world to tell you that you're worthless. And so I got to thinking about it. I'm not worthless, and I have nothing to be ashamed of. I never consented to this, abuse I've been put through. There's nothing for me to be ashamed of. So I'm making I'm making a video, and when I get done, I'll watch it. And if I'm comfortable, I'll post it. Now, some of these videos, I may make one hour-long video right now, or I might make a whole bunch of 15-minute videos. I don't know. It just depends on how long I can talk before I, lose my train of thought. But some of this stuff could involve things that people don't want to share with their kids, like sexual things. And if that's in here, well, I'll push the appropriate buttons on YouTube when I upload the video, and you'll get a warning. And the warning is real. If you don't want somebody in your house to hear conversations about things that are taboo, then you probably shouldn't watch it with your kids. You may not want to even watch it yourself. But a lot of the stuff I do and talk about, people don't understand, and they feel uncomfortable asking about it. But some people do. They ask me, like, why are you married to a retarded person? Because if you've seen any of my videos with my wife is very profoundly retarded. She wasn't always that bad, but she's always been retarded. And when you look at me, just on your screen, I'm 60 years old. I'm not bad for looking for a 60-year-old, but when I was in my 20s, I was a really good-looking fella. I was tall. I've always been really smart. I was always like close to being the smartest kid in my school when I was going to school. So as I go through this information, hopefully you'll understand why I'm in this predicament. Anyway, if we start, I'm going to try to put all my thoughts into a chronological order, because this is the stuff that goes through my head over and over again. All day long, I've got the same thoughts come up, and this is going on for decades. It's all I can think about. And going back to my first really, really traumatic experience, the first day of first grade. Every child, the first time they're brought to school, they're scared. They don't know what to expect. And I was as well. But after going through the initial shock of being put into a desk, the teachers started talking to us and asking people questions, what's your name and that kind of stuff. And I got over it. I got over the initial shock, so I'm okay. They teach us in the classroom for a while, and then they'd take us out onto the playground. Well, I was real shy. I didn't talk to anybody. Kept my mouth shut, just sat in my desk, did what the teacher told me. But I walked out onto the playground, and there was a kid there, and he kicked me in the leg. And it hurt. And I didn't say anything. I'd never been exposed to something like that. I was in shock. And the kid says, "Run, or we're going to beat you up." And so there was a whole bunch of boys around there, and they all started kicking me. And so I started running. And I looked up, and there in the the playground, they had teachers stationed in different areas to watch the kids. You got to have adults to supervise 6-year-olds. So I ran as fast as I could to one of those teachers. And I'm screaming, and these kids are kicking me and punching me. And the teacher didn't do anything. And so I just kept running to try to keep from getting beaten. And eventually they kicked my legs out from under me. And they just started beating me, pummeling me, and jumping on me, and just tearing me up. And I looked up, I was laying on the ground, and all these little boys were standing like in a football huddle around me and laughing. And on the other side, like right outside of the huddle, were the teachers just standing there watching these children beat me up. So obviously, I go home. I don't even remember what happened that day. After I got home, I must have told my parents. I have no memory. But I do remember that as time went on, I knew I couldn't talk to my parents about the beatings. Because for whatever reason, they did just what everybody else did. They either blamed me or they, like my dad, like one of his main things he liked to do every time I would come home and he found out that I had been beaten up, is he would talk about how fun it is to fight and how when he was younger, he used to fight a bunch of kids. He beat all kinds of kids up. And he left me feeling ashamed because he wanted me to be, a boy, to beat these kids up. And he was obviously upset with me. So I just kept it to myself. For years and years, I just kept it to myself. But I had to hide every day when I would go to school. If they would tell us to go out to the playground, I would try to just run to a spot somewhere behind a tree, or I would go under the steps, or I would find some kind of place where all the kids couldn't see me. Every now and then they would start looking for me. They'd realize that they needed somebody to beat up, and they would search wherever until they found me, and then they would beat me. And so all my life, starting from the very first day of first grade, I have been beaten. Like when I was in elementary school, I was pretty much beaten every day, or laughed at, or spit on, or had my homework taken and thrown in the trash, or my glasses broken. I can't tell you how many times kids just came and took my glasses off my head and said, "I'm going to break your glasses," and then just break them. And something that really, really hurt is that every time I was beaten, I would always end up on the ground with people on top of me, kicking me, punching me. And there were always a bunch of little girls standing around laughing. And so from a very early age, I was, scared of girls and boys. I was scared of everybody. Well, I guess getting back to hiding from the kids, one day I was so scared, I didn't want to even go out on the playground. And so I don't remember exactly how I did it. You're not allowed to stay in the classroom, but I somehow, instead of going out, I just ran through the school and worked my way back into my classroom because they had a big wooden door. And when the door was open, it was up against the wall. And so I just ran in the classroom and I stood inside, behind the door. And I would just stand there with my arms next to me and look through the crack. And I would do that every day. Once I realized I could do that, That was my hiding place. And one day I can remember I was standing there, and I'd have to stand there for like an hour. And I could hear kids going up and down the hall saying, "He's got to be in here. He's got to be in here." And I don't know how those kids got back in without getting caught, because the teacher wouldn't let you go in the school when you. But they probably did the same thing as me. They said they had to go to the bathroom or something. But anyway, I'm standing there shaking, just scared to death they're going to find me. And they do. And they just pull the door open, and they all start laughing. No one beat me up. They were just laughing and saying, "Look, he's hiding from us." Well, when I started first grade, I could run just as fast as anybody. I was very athletic, very healthy. By the end of first grade, all of the soft tissue in my body had been damaged. My muscles, my tendons, my ligaments, everything was damaged. And so I walked funny. Now, the way my parents explained it was that I had a growth spurt, and the growth spurt caused that. It caused me to have bad joints. They didn't do it immediately. It was like years later when I was actually an adult. They would tell people that the reason I couldn't walk good was because of a growth spurt. Because I did grow a lot, but I think that was around 10th or 11th grade or something. But for whatever reason, like I say, by the beginning of second grade, I couldn't run anymore. Everything on my body hurt. And, I used to think that the reason kids beat me up is because I walk funny. But the fact is, they beat me up. They started beating me up, when I was still healthy and athletic. So in third grade, we had what they called a field day, which is where they take the classes and they have races and stuff. And they called me out of the class, and they sent me to the special ed class. To this day, I have no idea who did that or why they did it. Obviously people knew that there was something wrong with me because of all my injuries. So they put me with the special ed kids because I would be able to compete with them. You got kids, you know how special ed is. There's kids in there in wheelchairs and on walkers and people with Down syndrome. And I could compete with those kids, even in my injured condition. But what I learned from that experience is that the retarded children didn't beat me up. And so from then on, I always tried to, like if we were put out on the playground and there were retarded kids somewhere, I would go by the retarded kids to hide from the other kids. And of course, you're interacting with them, talking to them and stuff. And there's no fun in talking to retarded people. It's like talking to an imaginary friend, because they really can't, they can't communicate much more than emotion. But over the course of my education, I eventually developed friendships with retarded people. A bunch of retarded people are my friends. To this day, those are the people, when I see them at the store, I know them, they know me. I wave to them and talk to them. I never had a normal friend. First grade through ninth grade, I only got to talk to retarded people, because if I talked to normal people, I would get beaten. And the thing about it is the school had some kind of thing where they didn't want normal kids hanging out with the retarded kids because they thought somebody would be bullying them. And so some teachers, when they would see me with the retarded kids, they would force me to go over by the regular kids, And even though they were worried about the retarded kids getting bullied, as soon as I was set into the area where the normal kids were, I would get beaten. And no one would say a thing. The teachers, from all the way through elementary, middle school, high school, the teachers would watch while the other children beat me. So, when I joined the Navy, the reason I joined, I wanted to get a retirement, and I wanted a 20-year retirement. At 38 years old, I could retire for life. But the form of bullying that happens when you're in the military is different than, it's not always different. Sometimes you get beaten. But a lot of it is you just never get a raise or a promotion or anything. And so I went into the Navy as a rank of E4 because of my intelligence. I took a test and they gave me E4. But when I got in the Navy, every time it was, I went up for a promotion, I was denied. And I could see that I was never, ever going to get a promotion. If I stayed in for 20 years, I would have gotten out as an E4. And you can't retire as an E4. There's not enough money to live on. And what I've learned recently is that if you don't make rank, they'll take it. If you get 18 years in, when you go to re-enlist for your last stint, so that you can get your retirement, they will kick you out without a retirement. I didn't even know that at the time. But I knew I couldn't retire, so I got out after 6 years. Well, the whole time I was in, I was trying to meet girls, and I was praying, please, Father, give me a girlfriend. Please let me have a girlfriend. That's all I wanted. I mean, I started praying for that even when I was in middle school. I must have prayed now for 50 years for a girlfriend. And the only girlfriend I ever had was, I had two little retarded girls that followed me around. And when I got in the Navy, one of them wrote me letters. She wrote me letters regularly. And she'd send me cards. And, she was retarded. She was unattractive. There was no way I could ever be in love with her. But I never had any contact with her. I would go, like in work sometimes in the Navy, I would be assigned to work at places where they had women. And I would try to start conversations with the women. And they always just looked at me like I was insane. Like I was overstepping my boundaries by talking to them. Because I was worthless and they were valuable. So I got home from the Navy, 1986, and having never had experience being with a woman, never had a conversation with a woman, never have kissed a woman, never held a woman's hand, I finally just got to thinking, God has been sending me this retarded girl. For 9 years, she's been writing me, she's been calling me. So I went to see her. And after a short while, I reached out and held her hand. And when I felt her hand in mine, it was like the most powerful drug that you'll ever experience. I had an adrenaline rush. I'd never held a girl's hand before. And that was it. From that point, I couldn't help myself. I thought, I've been sticking my nose up at this gift from God, this woman. She's been, for 9 years, she's been nice to me. And no other woman on earth has ever been nice to me even once. Other women never even respond to me when I tried to talk to them. Wouldn't talk back to me, nothing. So I told her if she wanted, she could come live with me as long as she paid her half of the bills and she did her half of the chores, she could stay with me. I had seen a lot of people get married, and as soon as they get married, everything changes and people start being hateful. But I wasn't going to get married. I told her all along I would never ever marry you. But she started getting really depressed because I wouldn't marry her. She's like, you don't really love me. If you really love me, you'd marry me. But she lived with me for a year. We had sex for a year. We snuggled every night for a year. And I could remember thinking, I don't ever want this to end. I cannot go back to sleeping alone. I have to have this woman to snuggle with. So I married her. I made sure that our wedding day was the most perfect day it could be. I cleaned the house, cut the grass, washed the car, washed all the clothes. I got a meal together, a really nice meal for us to eat. We were too poor to go anywhere, but we had our own little honeymoon there at the house. And we got married. My wife looked like she was the happiest she's ever been in her life. But that night when we got into bed and I reached over to put my arms around her, she pushed away from me. And when I tried to have sex with her, she was pushing away from me, and she was squirming out from under me. And I said, "Are you okay?" And she said, "Oh." And I said, "I didn't ask you. I asked you, are you okay?" And she said, "Oh." And it seemed like she did that a few times. And I didn't want to ruin our honeymoon. I had gone through so much to make this the most perfect night in the world that I was afraid to say anything. But I did have sex with her, but it was not like it didn't seem like she was enjoying it. It seemed like she was just going through the motions, or not even that. So the second night we got in bed, and she did the same thing, and I said, "We have to talk. Do you no longer like sex?" I was trying to make her think about her behavior. And she said, "I didn't say that." Which, what that's called is gaslighting. That's when somebody tries to make you think you're crazy by manipulating you and lying to you. I didn't ask her what she said. I asked her if she didn't like sex. And she answered a question, completely unrelated question, but made it appear as if she had answered perfectly. I said, "Look, I didn't ask you what you said. I asked you, do you no longer want to have sex?" And she said, "I didn't say that." And so at this point, this is not my honeymoon. I'm not trying to keep this as the most perfect day. I start losing it. I'm like, "What is wrong with you? I'm asking you a serious husband-wife question. This is our family. We need to talk. Do you no longer like sex?" And she said, "I didn't say that." Over the years, I came to learn that nothing out of her mouth from the day we were married until today has been anything but gaslighting. She acts as if every truth is a precious secret in the war between me and her. No matter what I ask her, she lies. And she's just horrible, evil person. For the first 10 years, I was praying, I prayed for decades for God to send me a girlfriend. And then I spent about 10 years going, "God, please tell me what I need to do to make my wife love me." I just said 10 years. I don't know if it may have been 2 years, it may have been 20 years that I said that prayer. But I know that at some point, I just started praying, "God, please kill it. Please kill it. It's destroying me." She quit her job immediately. She stopped doing chores immediately. And she started tearing up my house. It has currently been 33 years since I've had sex. And in 33 years, she has done nothing to help me and everything in her power to hurt me. The big thing that finally caused me to lose it. Well, for the whole time, she would, like any time. Another thing that she would do is that every time I would work, I ended up having to work 2 jobs because she quit her job. And then I would have to come home and cook and clean because she refused to do chores. And when I would go to sleep, try to go to sleep, as soon as I would fall off to sleep, she would poke me. For no reason, just poke me. And I'd go, "What do you want?" And she'd ask me some stupid question that she knew the answer to. And I'd say, "You woke me up for that?" At this point, I'm not understanding the extent of pure evil. But she did this to me every night for decades. She would just wake me up anytime if I fell asleep while she was awake, she would poke me and make up a stupid question. And so I had to start driving my car out to the highway, pulling over to the side of the highway and sleeping in my car. Eventually, I set a tent up out in the woods, and I would sleep in the tent. And at other times, I would sleep here on the porch. It's the only way I could get any sleep. She kept me awake, used sleep deprivation techniques on me for 30 years. I guess that's the end of everything I have to say about this. I'll do this more. I might not post this. If I post it, I might post some other ones. But that's how I ended up married to a retarded person. That's why that's part of why my life is so terrible.